Am I the asshole for refusing to get rid of my baby after my husband accused me of cheating while being manipulated by his ex-girlfriend? I am a 32-year-old woman who never thought I would be in this situation, but here I am. My world was turned upside down last week, and I am still trying to process everything that happened. I guess I should start from the beginning. My husband, let's call him Mark, who is 34, and I have been married for 5 years. We both have good jobs. I work in marketing and he is in finance. We always talked about having kids someday, but we were in no rush. We enjoyed our life together, traveling and focusing on our careers. About 3 months ago, I found out I was pregnant. It wasn't planned, but we were both excited. Mark was over the moon, already talking about nursery colors and baby names. Everything seemed perfect. At work, I am part of a team of 6 people. One of my co-workers, let's call him Jake, who is 30, joined our team about a year ago. Jake and I got along well from the start. We have similar senses of humor and often work on projects together. I never thought anything of it. He is just a good colleague and friend. Last week, Mark came home from work later than usual. I was in the kitchen heating up some leftovers for dinner. As soon as he walked in, I could tell something was off. His face was tight, and he barely looked at me as he set down his briefcase. I asked him if everything was okay, but he just mumbled something about a long day. We sat down to eat in silence. I tried to make conversation, talking about my day and something funny that happened at work, but Mark was barely responding. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of awkward silence, Mark put down his fork and looked at me. His eyes were cold in a way I had never seen before. He asked, "Is the baby mine?" I was shocked. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Of course the baby was his. How could he think otherwise? I told him exactly that, but he didn't seem convinced. Mark then started asking a series of questions. How often did I work late? How many times had I gone out for drinks with coworkers? Did I ever work on weekends? Each question felt like an accusation. I answered honestly, trying to stay calm even though my heart was racing. Yes, sometimes I worked late, but never excessively. Yes, I occasionally had drinks with coworkers, but always in a group setting. And yes, I sometimes worked on weekends, but usually from home. Then Mark dropped the bombshell. He asked about Jake. How often did we work together? Did we ever meet outside of work? Had I ever been alone with him? I was stunned. Where was all this coming from? I told Mark that Jake was just a coworker and friend. We worked on projects together often, but we had never met outside of work events. I couldn't understand why Mark was so fixated on Jake. Mark's face hardened as I spoke. When I finished, he sat back in his chair and said, "I don't believe you. I think you've been having an affair with Jake, and I think that baby might be his." I felt like I had been slapped. Tears started welling up in my eyes as I tried to process what Mark was saying. How could he think this? I have never been anything but faithful to him. I love him more than anything in the world. I tried to reason with Mark. I told him again and again that I had never cheated on him, that Jake was just a friend, that the baby was absolutely his. But Mark wouldn't listen. He kept bringing up little things, how I had mentioned Jake's name a few times when talking about work, how I had been more tired lately because of the pregnancy, how I had been distant, again, pregnancy hormones. As Mark listed his evidence, I felt myself getting angry. How dare he accuse me of this after 5 years of marriage? How could he not trust me? I told him he was being ridiculous and that he needed to stop this nonsense right now. That's when Mark dropped the ultimatum. If you want to stay married to me, you need to get an abortion. I'm not raising another man's child. I was speechless. Abort our baby? The child we were so excited about just a few days ago. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told Mark absolutely not, that I would never abort our child, especially not over his unfounded suspicions. Mark's face turned cold. He said, Fine, then I want a divorce and I'll be asking for a paternity test." I broke down crying. How had this happened? How had we gone from being excited, expectant parents to this in just a matter of days? I begged Mark to reconsider, to trust me, to remember our love and our life together, but he wouldn't budge. The next few days were a blur. Mark moved into the spare bedroom and barely spoke to me. I tried to talk to him several times, but he just shut me out. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. I was worried about the stress affecting the baby. I called my sister and told her everything. She was furious with Mark and offered to let me stay with her for a while. I was tempted, but I didn't want to leave my home. I still hoped that Mark would come to his senses. A week has passed now and nothing has changed. Mark is still insisting on either an abortion or a divorce. I have told him repeatedly that I won't abort our child, but he won't listen. He has already talked to a lawyer about divorce proceedings. I am at a loss. I love Mark and I want our marriage to work, but I also love this baby and I can't bring myself to end the pregnancy. I don't understand how Mark can throw away our marriage over these baseless suspicions. I have suggested couples counseling, but Mark refuses. He says there is nothing to discuss unless I admit the truth, but there is no truth to admit. I have never cheated on him and this baby is his. I thought about reaching out to Jake to ask him to talk to Mark, but I am worried that might make things worse. Mark might see it as proof of our supposed affair. My friends are split. Some think I should just take the paternity test to prove Mark wrong, others say I shouldn't have to prove anything and that Mark's behavior is unforgivable. My family is firmly on my side, but they live in another state and can't offer much practical support. I am trying to stay strong for the baby, but this stress is taking its toll. I am not sleeping well, I am constantly on edge, and I am worried about the effect all this might have on my pregnancy. Part of me wonders if I should just agree to the divorce. Maybe it would be better for the baby to grow up with a single mother than in a home with a father who resents them. But another part of me still loves Mark and wants to fight for our marriage. I never thought I would be in this position. I always believed that Mark and I had a strong, trusting relationship. I don't understand how he can throw it all away like this. I feel betrayed, hurt, and angry at the same time. I am worried about Mark. This behavior is so out of character for him. I wonder if something else is going on that I don't know about. Is he having problems at work? Is he dealing with some kind of mental health issue? But whenever I try to ask him about these things, he shuts down. I have thought about reaching out to his family or friends, but I am not sure if that is the right thing to do. I don't want to air our dirty laundry, but I am running out of options. The pregnancy is progressing and I have my first ultrasound scheduled for next week. I always imagined Mark would be there with me, holding my hand and getting excited about seeing our baby for the first time. Now, I don't know if he will even acknowledge the appointment. I am torn between anger at Mark for putting me in this position and worry for him. I still love him despite everything. I want to understand why he is doing this, why he suddenly doesn't trust me. But every time I try to talk to him, it just turns into an argument. I have started looking into my options if Mark does go through with the divorce. I have spoken to a lawyer in secret. I don't want to escalate things, but I need to understand what my rights are. The thought of going through a divorce while pregnant is terrifying, but I need to be prepared. My job has been understanding so far. I have had to take a few personal days to deal with all this and my boss has been supportive, but I am worried about the long-term impact. If Mark and I do divorce, will I be able to keep my job and take care of a baby on my own? I have also been researching pregnancy and stress. Everything I read says that high levels of stress can be harmful to the baby. I am doing my best to stay calm, but it is hard when my whole world feels like it is falling apart. I have started keeping a journal, writing down everything that is happening. Part of me hopes that someday when all this is over, Mark will read it and understand what he put me through. Another part of me thinks I am just trying to make sense of a senseless situation. Yesterday, I ran into Jake at work. He could tell something was wrong and asked if I was okay. I nearly broke down right there in the office. I managed to hold it together, but I wonder what Jake would say if he knew he was at the center of all this drama. I have thought about telling Jake what is going on, but I am not sure if that is the right thing to do. On one hand, he is inadvertently involved in this situation. On the other hand, bringing him into it might just make things worse with Mark. Every night I go to bed hoping that I will wake up and this will all have been a bad dream. Every morning, I wake up and remember that this is my reality now. I am trying to stay positive for the baby's sake. I talk to my belly, telling the baby how loved they are, how excited I am to meet them. But sometimes in my darkest moments, I wonder if Mark is right. What if there is something wrong with me? What if I did something to destroy our marriage without even realizing it? I know logically that these thoughts aren't true. I know I have been faithful to Mark. I know this baby is his. But after days and days of accusations, it is hard not to let the doubt creep in. I have started seeing a therapist on my own. I need someone to talk to, someone who can help me navigate this impossible situation. It helps, but it is not a solution. The therapist suggested that Mark might be projecting, that maybe he is the one who has been unfaithful. But I can't let myself believe that, it would hurt too much. So here I am, pregnant, alone, and facing the possibility of divorce. I never imagined this is where I would be at this point in my life. I always thought Mark and I would be picking out baby clothes together, not fighting over paternity tests and divorce lawyers. I don't know what to do. I won't abort this baby, I already love them too much. But I also don't want to lose my marriage. I feel like I am being forced to choose between my child and my husband, and it is tearing me apart. So Reddit, am I the asshole for refusing to abort my baby? Should I just take the paternity test to prove Mark wrong, or should I stand my ground and let him file for divorce if that is what he wants to do? I am lost, hurt, and scared. Any advice would be appreciated. TLDR, my husband accuses me of cheating and says the baby isn't his. He wants me to either get an abortion or he will file for divorce. I refuse to abort, but I don't want a divorce either. Am I the asshole? Update. Hello everyone. I never expected to be back here with an update, but a lot has happened since my last post. I want to thank everyone who offered advice and support. Your kind words meant more to me than I can express during that difficult time. So here's what happened. A few days after my original post, I got a call from my sister. She sounded upset and told me she had some information about my situation with Mark. I was confused at first, but what she told me next left me speechless. Apparently, Mark's ex-girlfriend from college, let's call her Sarah, had recently moved back to our city. My sister's friend works at the same company as Sarah and overheard her bragging about how she was going to get Mark back. According to what my sister heard, Sarah had been in contact with Mark for weeks. She had been feeding him lies about seeing me with Jake, making up stories about us having secret meetings and acting inappropriately at work. She even went as far as to tell Mark she had seen us kissing in a car outside a restaurant. I was furious. How could Mark believe these lies? How could he trust his ex-girlfriend over his wife of 5 years? I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and oddly relief. At least now I knew where all this was coming from. I confronted Mark that evening. I told him everything my sister had told me and demanded an explanation. At first, he tried to deny it, but when I pressed him, he finally admitted the truth. Sarah had reached out to him on social media a few months ago. They started talking, catching up on old times. Then, when she moved back to the city, they met for coffee. That's when she started telling him about my supposed affair with Jake. Mark claimed he didn't want to believe it at first, but Sarah kept providing more and more evidence. She'd send him pictures of me and Jake at work events, which she had gotten from the company's social media pages, twisting innocent interactions into something sinister. I asked Mark why he didn't just talk to me about it. Why did he trust Sarah over me? He said he was afraid of being made a fool of, that Sarah had convinced him I would just lie if confronted. As he talked, I felt my anger growing. This man, whom I had loved and trusted for years, had allowed his ex-girlfriend to manipulate him so easily. He had been willing to throw away our marriage, to demand I abort our child, all because of lies told by someone who clearly had her own agenda. I asked Mark if he'd ever cheated on me with Sarah. He swore he hadn't, that they'd only met that one time for coffee. But at this point, I didn't know if I could believe anything he said. We talked and argued for hours. Mark apologized over and over, begging me to forgive him. He said he'd been stupid and weak, that he'd let his insecurities get the best of him. He promised to cut all contact with Sarah and said he wanted to work on our marriage. But as I sat there, listening to his apologies and promises, I realized something: the trust between us was broken. Even if Sarah's lies were the catalyst, Mark was the one who chose to believe them. He was the one who threatened our marriage and our unborn child. He was the one who put me through weeks of hell instead of having an honest conversation with me. In that moment, I made a decision. I told Mark I wanted a divorce. He was shocked. He begged me to reconsider, to give him another chance. But my mind was made up. I couldn't stay with someone who trusted an ex-girlfriend over his wife. I couldn't raise a child with someone who had been so quick to accuse me of infidelity and demand an abortion. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. I moved out and stayed with my sister. I filed for divorce. Mark tried several times to change my mind, but I stood firm. It hasn't been easy. There are days when I miss the life we had, when I wonder if I made the right choice. But then I remember the pain and betrayal I felt, and I know I am doing what's best for me and my baby. I am now 5 months pregnant. The baby is healthy, and it's a girl. I am scared about being a single mom, but I am also excited to meet my daughter and start this new chapter of my life. As for Mark, last I heard, he tried to rekindle things with Sarah but quickly realized what kind of person she really was. He has reached out a few times, asking to be part of the baby's life. I am still deciding how to handle that. Jake, my coworker, was horrified when he found out he had been unwittingly involved in all this drama. He has been supportive and understanding, but I have made it clear that I am not interested in anything beyond friendship right now. My focus is on my baby and healing from this whole ordeal. So that's where things stand now. It's not the happily ever after I once imagined, but I am at peace with my decision. I am looking forward to the future, whatever it may bring. Thank you again to everyone who supported me. Your kindness helped me through one of the toughest times of my life.